He appears without a birth certificate. He disappears without a funeral. He has no genealogy recorded, no father listed, no mother named, no tribe acknowledged, and yet one of the most powerful men in all of history bowed before him and paid him a tenth of everything he had just won in battle. His name is Melchizedek, and in the entire sweep of the Old Testament, he is mentioned only twice, once in 14 verses in Genesis, and once in a single thunderclap of a verse in Psalms. Yet the writer of the book of Hebrews returns to him again and again, insisting that this man, or whatever he is, holds the key to understanding the eternal priesthood of Jesus Christ. So who is Melchizedek? Why does the Bible treat him with such deliberate, almost breathtaking mystery? And what does a king-priest from the ancient city of Salem have to do with your salvation today? Stay with me, because when you understand Melchizedek, you will never read the priesthood of Jesus the same way again. The world he stepped into. To understand Melchizedek, you have to understand the world he stepped into. We are in the ancient Near East, roughly 2,000 years before the birth of Christ. The political geography of Canaan is not the relatively settled landscape of later centuries. It is a fragile, violent mosaic of city-states, each one ruled by its own king, each one bound into shifting alliances and broken by sudden wars. Genesis chapter 14 opens with what scholars have called the first recorded war in human history. A coalition of 4 kings from the east marching against 5 kings in the valley of Siddim, near what we today identify as the region of the Dead Sea. The eastern kings win. They plunder Sodom and Gomorrah. They take prisoners. And among those prisoners, dragged away in the dust of a defeated column, is Lot, Abraham's nephew. He does not write a letter to a tribunal. He does not wait for political resolution. He arms 318 trained men from his own household. Trained, the text says, suggesting these are not farmers picking up spears, but warriors. And he pursues the coalition kings all the way to Dan, in the far north, and then beyond, to Hobah, near Damascus. He defeats them at night. He recovers every person. He recovers every piece of property. And it is on the way back from this extraordinary military victory, flushed with success, laden with spoils, his nephew free beside him, that something happens which the writer of Genesis treats as more significant than the battle itself. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of God Most High. Just like that. No announcement, no fanfare. He simply arrives, as though he had always been there, as though the universe had long been waiting for this precise intersection of roads. The name and the city. Let's slow down and extract everything the text is quietly shouting at us. The name Melchizedek is a compound Hebrew name, Malki, meaning king, and Sedek, meaning righteousness. So his very name means king of righteousness. And his city? Salem. Most ancient Jewish sources, from the Targum of Onkelos to the writings of the first-century historian Josephus, identify Salem with Jerusalem, or more precisely, with the ancient site upon which Jerusalem would later be built. The Hebrew word shalom means peace, and Salem is drawn from the very same root. So, Melchizedek is not just king of a city. He is the king of righteousness who rules over peace. The writer of Hebrews will make absolutely sure we catch this. In chapter 7, he spells it out. He is first, by translation of his name, King of Righteousness. And then He is also King of Salem, that is, King of Peace. Every syllable of this man's identity is a theological statement. And then there is his title. He is called Kohen Lel Elyon, Priest of God Most High. Now, El Elyon is a fascinating divine title in the ancient Near Eastern world. It was used broadly. Archaeologically, we find the title appearing in non-Israelite contexts, in Phoenician inscriptions and other ancient texts, as a general term for a supreme deity. And yet Abraham immediately, without hesitation, identifies Melchizedek's El Elyon as his own God, the God who created heaven and earth. This is a remarkable moment of recognition. Abraham does not correct Melchizedek. He does not say, "Actually, my God has a different name." He affirms the connection. There is a true theology already operating in this man, a genuine knowledge of the Most High God, in a city that predates the Mosaic covenant, before there was a tribe of Levi, before there was a tabernacle, before there was a Torah scroll. The tithe and the blessing. Now watch what Abraham does. He gives Melchizedek a tenth of everything, a tithe of all the war spoils. Here is why that detail is seismic. In the ancient world, and specifically in the Levitical order that would come centuries later through Moses, the tithe flowed in one direction, from the people upward to the priesthood, because the priests stood in a higher spiritual position as mediators between God and man. A person did not pay tithes to someone lesser. You paid tithes to someone greater. And Abraham, the father of the faithful, the man to whom God had just made the most sweeping covenant in recorded scripture, the man in whose seed all nations would be blessed, Abraham, of his own free will, tithes to Melchizedek. The argument Hebrews builds from this is staggering in its logic. If Abraham represents the entire Levitical lineage, because Levi would later be born from Abraham's descendants, then when Abraham paid tithes to Melchizedek, Levi, in a theological sense, also paid tithes to Melchizedek. The entire Levitical priesthood bowed in the loins of their ancestor before this king-priest. Hebrews chapter 7 verse 9 makes the point directly. One might even say that Levi himself, who receives tithes, paid tithes through Abraham. And then there is the blessing. Melchizedek blesses Abraham. And as the writer of Hebrews observes with clean, uncluttered logic, it is always the lesser who is blessed by the greater. Think about what that means. The man God had chosen as the foundation stone of his covenant people, the man whose faith was counted as righteousness, received a priestly blessing from this mysterious king of Salem. The Levitical priesthood that would come from Abraham was, in principle, subordinate to the order that Melchizedek represented. Psalm 110, the pivot point of the entire Bible. Now fast forward roughly 1,000 years. David is king of Israel. He is on the throne in, significantly, Jerusalem. And he writes Psalm 110, one of the most quoted psalms in the entire New Testament, cited by Jesus himself, quoted in Acts, referenced in Romans, anchoring the entire argument of Hebrews. In this psalm, David writes something that would have stopped every Israelite who read it in their tracks. He writes, and this is the Lord speaking, "You are a priest forever, after the order of Melchizedek." Stop. That one sentence fractures 1,000 years of religious expectation. In Israel, priests came from one tribe, Levi, specifically from the family of Aaron. Kings came from another tribe, Judah. These two offices were constitutionally separate. There was even a sobering episode in 2 Chronicles chapter 26, where King Uzziah attempted to burn incense in the temple, a priestly act, and was immediately struck with leprosy as divine judgment. The separation was absolute. The crown and the censer could not be held by the same hands. And yet Psalm 110 declares that the one who sits at the right hand of God, the one David calls his Lord, will be both a king, a priest, forever, not after the order of Aaron, not derived from Levi, but after the order of Melchizedek, an older, higher, more enduring order than anything the law of Moses ever established. Hebrews 7. The order explained. By the time we reach the letter to the Hebrews, the author is writing to Jewish believers who are under enormous pressure to abandon Christ and return to the Levitical system. The temple is still standing, the sacrifices are still being offered, the high priests are still going behind the veil, and the argument being whispered in their ears is this: your old system worked. Why trade the priesthood of Aaron for this crucified carpenter from Nazareth? The writer of Hebrews builds his entire counter-argument on Melchizedek. And the argument is this: the Levitical priesthood was always meant to be temporary. It was a shadow, a type, a scaffolding around something that hadn't been fully revealed yet. And the proof that it was temporary is sitting right there in their own scriptures. In the figure of Melchizedek, who operated as a legitimate high priest of God Most High centuries before Aaron was born, and who therefore represents a priesthood that transcends the Mosaic covenant altogether. Hebrews chapter 7 verse 3 describes Melchizedek as being, in the language of the text, without father, without mother, without genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but resembling the Son of God, he continues a priest forever. Now, a great deal of debate has swirled around these words across the centuries. Some early church fathers and some interpreters today have suggested that Melchizedek was actually a pre-incarnate appearance of Christ, what theologians call a Christophany, a visible manifestation of the Son of God before the incarnation in Bethlehem. Others argue more carefully that the text is describing the way Melchizedek appears in the biblical record, without genealogy, without recorded birth or death, and that this literary absence makes him function as a type, a foreshadowing of Christ's eternal priesthood. The phrase in the original Greek is particularly careful. Avthoropoiemenos de to huio to theou, made to resemble or liken to the Son of God. He resembles the Son of God, not the other way around. The Son of God is the original. Melchizedek is the type. The shadow precedes the substance, but the substance is always the point. And what makes the order of Melchizedek superior to the Levitical order? Hebrews gives us at least 3 reasons, each one building on the last. First, the Levitical priests died. They were mortal. They needed successors. They had to be replaced, generation after generation, in an endless cycle of appointment and death and reappointment. But the one who fulfills the Melchizedekian order holds his priesthood permanently. In the Greek, aparabatos, untransferable, inviolable. He does not hand his office to a successor because there is no successor. Second, the Levitical priests were themselves sinners. Every time they entered the Holy of Holies on the Day of Atonement, the high priest had to offer a sacrifice for his own sins before he could offer a sacrifice for the people's. But the one who ministers after the order of Melchizedek is holy, blameless, unstained. He does not need to offer anything for himself. His sacrifice was made once, and it was enough, and it will never need to be repeated. Third, the Levitical sacrifices did not actually remove sin. They covered it. They pointed forward. The blood of bulls and goats, as Hebrews chapter 10 will tell us plainly, cannot take away sin. They were annual confessions that the problem was still unsolved, but this high priest, by a single offering, has perfected forever those who are being sanctified. Jesus and the order, the magnificent union. Here is where everything converges. Jesus of Nazareth is from the tribe of Judah, not Levi. Under the Mosaic law, he has absolutely no qualification to serve as a priest. None. If the Levitical order were the final word on priesthood, Jesus would be disqualified before he ever opened his mouth. But the Levitical order was never the final word. Psalm 110 had already been installed in the scriptures, centuries before the incarnation, as a divine announcement. There is an older order. There is a priesthood that predates Moses, that transcends Sinai, that belongs not to a tribe, but to an eternal appointment from God himself. And the one who holds that priesthood is a king priest, simultaneously seated on a throne and standing at an altar. This is precisely who Jesus is. He is the Lion of the tribe of Judah, a king, and he is the Lamb who was slain, our high priest, our once-for-all sacrifice, our mediator, who ever lives to make intercession. He is the King of righteousness, reigning over a kingdom of peace. He came to Abraham in shadow. He came to you in flesh. And notice this: when Melchizedek appeared to Abraham on that dusty road after the battle, he brought bread and wine. Of all the things a king priest could have brought, gold, incense, weapons, tribute, he brought bread and wine, the elements of a meal, the elements of a covenant, the same elements that Jesus would take into his hands in an upper room on the night he was betrayed, break before his disciples and say, "This is my body. This is my blood." 2,000 years before the Last Supper, Melchizedek was already setting the table. Application: what this means for your life today. Let me land this in your actual life, because this is not just theology to admire from a distance. This is meant to change the way you walk. So many believers live as though the work of Christ is provisional, as though it might run out, as though God might one day look at the record of your failures and determine that the sacrifice wasn't quite enough for someone like you. They live in a kind of spiritual performance anxiety, offering their good days as compensation for their bad ones, hoping the scales tip far enough in their favor. But the priesthood of Jesus is not provisional. It is a parabatos, permanent, untransferable, inviolable. He does not step away from the altar when you sin. He does not hand his office to someone with a better candidate. He ever lives to make intercession for you. That verb in Hebrews, ever lives, is present tense and continuous, right now. As you hear these words, there is a high priest at the right hand of the Father, who knows your name, who bore your sin, and who has not stopped advocating on your behalf for a single second. And here is the other side of this truth that the church so often misses. Because Christ is our high priest after the order of Melchizedek, we are no longer on the outside of the sanctuary. The veil was torn, not patched, not adjusted, torn from top to bottom by God. Hebrews chapter 10 says we now have confidence to enter the holy places by the blood of Jesus, by the new and living way he opened for us through the curtain. You have been given a boldness that no Levitical priest ever possessed. Even the high priest of Israel could only enter the most holy place once a year, with fear and trembling, hoping the blood in his hands would be accepted. You are invited to come with confidence, not because of who you are, but because of who your high priest is and what he has permanently accomplished. This is what Melchizedek was always pointing to, not to himself. He was never the destination. He was a road sign in the desert, placed by God thousands of years in advance, pointing towards someone whose priesthood would not bend to death, whose sacrifice would not need repeating, whose righteousness would not require human genealogy to validate it. The mystery of Melchizedek is not ultimately a puzzle to solve. It is an invitation to trust. To trust that the God who planned this across millennia, who placed a foreshadowing in Genesis, confirmed it in Psalms, and unveiled it fully in the incarnation, did not do all of that casually or without you in mind. He wove Melchizedek into the story so that when you finally arrived at the cross, you would understand. This was not plan B. This was the plan from before the foundation of the world. A king of righteousness, ruling over peace, offering bread and wine, blessing the children of faith forever.